Hi, welcome everyone to the Aging Backwards Summit for 2025. Today we have a very special guest with us, Miss Dawn Schale. Hi, Dawn. Welcome to the summit.
Hey David, how you doing?
Doing great. Why don't you tell the audience just briefly a little bit about you and what you do?
So I'm happy to be here. My name is Dawn Schale. I am a certified life coach and soul healer, and what I do goes beyond just, the you can do it, the motivational, cheerleading type stuff. I deal with the heart of the matter, and the tagline I use for my business as well as my podcast is I guide people to the heart and truth of who they really are. And so I help people, I guide people into their truth. I don't provide answers for them. In sessions and things that I do with clients as well as in my podcast, I just talk about things that provoke thought and that stimulate that will bring the subconscious conscious because we often function out of our subconscious material, and so I guide people into that self-realization and discovery.
If people wanted to listen to your podcast, what is the name of your podcast?
Oh, that is Living Light, the Dark to Dawn, Rock Solid. And it is available. I'm going live tonight at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in Podbean. It is also then populated, published in YouTube, same name, Living Like Dr. Dawn Rock Solid, as well as Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and Spotify.
Okay, because this is being recorded, you're going live tonight, but it's Tuesday night, so you do your podcast on Tuesday evenings, correct?
Yes, Tuesday evenings.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we're talking about reversing aging or slowing down the aging process. Can you talk about a little bit what you do to slow down the aging process?
So, yeah, sure. I think that a healthy mindset, but it's really about a healthy heart set and being aligned, which I call like being aligned with your heart body, which is a phrase I made up a couple years ago because, some people talk about soul, some people talk about heart or spirit. So we can't really identify those things, right? You can't really draw a picture of spirit, soul, and there isn't really a visual, but I just call it the heart body because it's what goes on in here. And so I think that the more that we are tuned to our heart body and self-aware, we can make better choices mentally. And it's with a healthy mentality. Like I have a very young outlook on life. I'm 58 years young. I don't consider myself to be old. I don't think that I'm getting old. Those words never come out of my mouth. I think a lot of it has to do with what we really believe about ourselves, how we really feel about ourselves that sustains staying young. Like I'll say I have morning rituals and things that I say, but it's not just a mental understanding. I really know it. I believe it in here that I am youthing. Um, Blessing and abundance and all of that is infused in our DNA. It's like a birthright that humans were given, and they don't know how to really tap into it. So I've been practicing this for a very long time. I've actually been getting true story, if I could share this. It's not very long. I was last week or the week before, I was at the gym and I do work out also at least 4 days a week. I weight train, and it was back day, so I was on one of the back machines, and this guy came over to me and he's like, watching you work out is making me want to work out harder. He says, you have great energy. And he had no idea what I was dealing with in that moment. And I said, I have worked my butt off for this. You have no idea. And I said, it's just all, it's intention, setting your intentions as the kind of life that you want to create. Do you want to get old? Do you want to sit in a chair? Do you want to be on prescription drugs, or do you want to be physically healthy?
Yeah, I refer to it as mind, body, and spirit. You encompass all three. And it's also a mindset with action. So instead of just thinking, I am getting younger and I'm going to be younger, you actually have to do some action to do that. You have to make healthy choices. You have to exercise and you work out. What would you recommend for people if they wanted to begin slowing down the aging process? Because before we slow it down, I mean, before we reverse it, we have to slow it down. So what would you
Yeah.
recommend some of the health choices that you do?
I'm not a master guru when it comes to slowing down the aging process, but I do believe, however, we already discussed like heart and mind connection. And I think it's at least 20 years ago now that I cut a lot of just my diet. I don't even I consider it a lifestyle. It's not a diet. I cut a lot of things out. I only and I don't deprive myself. I don't believe in deprivation. I eat when I'm hungry. I don't eat out of boredom. Like I'm very aware of what my body needs in any given moment. I allow myself one day a week to eat whatever I want. It's really just a meal. I don't, it's cheat day, but it's really a meal because I'm half Italian. I love pasta. I love to cook. I love all the carbs and the pasta and the pizza and all those things. But during the week, 6 days a week, and it wasn't easy at first, but I managed to just eat really clean and healthy when I'm hungry, before the gym, before I work out. Um, just being aware of just being aware of and ingredients, because you talk about that yourself, being aware of what's the ingredients that are in the foods that we eat. Slowly, I began implementing healthier spices. Definitely pasture raised eggs. A lot of it has to do with the foods that we consume. So that is significant to slowing down the aging process. And I decided, um, if I could say this respectfully, I know that I have far exceeded my mom when she was my age, my mother when she was my age. And I said that, I'm not going to have that. I don't know what they call it, but bat wings or something, I think they're calling it now. And I
Flabby
just,
arms. I would call it flabby arms.
flabby arms. That's not going to be me. And I just made a decision. I set an intention 20 plus years ago that I want to go through my 40s, my 50s, and I'm headed 2 years away from 60. And I want to just fly right on by, like right in. I don't want to miss a beat with that. I don't want to get old. I don't want to let myself go. And so many people, as soon as they turn 50, or they're going to turn 50, they almost put in like they just hang their hat on the out to pasture. They just say, "Oh, I'm 50, I don't care anymore. What's the big deal? I'm going to get fat anyway. I'm going to start loosening up anyway." And that's a choice that you make. It's a choice that people make to think that because you're 50 and over, you no longer have to take care of yourself or work out. And then a lot of women will say, well, I don't care what I look like anymore. I did that in my 20s. It's not about how you look, it's about how you feel and having sustainable muscle through. This is why you see so many people, even in their late 50s and early 60s, they're limping, they're hunched over. They didn't build their muscle. They didn't take care of their frame from top to bottom. And I see it all the time where someone that's younger than me even looks older because they just didn't take care of themselves.
I definitely can relate to that since I'm 70.
And
And
you look marvelous.
thank you. And what I tell people is there's a difference between existing and living, and then there's a difference between living and thriving. And I choose to thrive. The other thing is, as you are aware, I didn't get my wake-up call until I was 61. When in July of 2016, my doctor told me, based on my lab results, and that I was fat. I was one of those people you're talking about, over 50 and fat,
Wow.
95% chance for a fatal heart attack. So it's never too late for someone over 50, over 60, over 70 to start improving their health and becoming healthier, more energetic, better mental clarity, just more vibrant. And the other thing I like to share with people is to be a participator in life instead of a spectator. And what I mean by that,
Yes.
people with kids and grandkids, mostly grandkids, be able to get down on the floor and play with them and get up without assistance, as opposed to just watching the kids.
That's a big deal. It's a really big deal.
What other suggestions or advice do you have for people who are, say, over 40 to start their longevity or health journey?
I think and what just popped into my mind, I just got to go with it. I got to go with what comes is as well as your dietary lifestyle of being conscious and aware of what you're eating. A lot of it has to do with emotional debris because and energy. So emotional debris and energy or material has weight to it, even though we can't see it. So when we see people that, they look like they're carrying the weight on their shoulders, they really are energetically. They didn't do their process and healing journey throughout their life because healing is not an arrival point. It's not something we achieve, it's a journey. And I think sometimes people interpret healing as, oh, that's only for someone who's broken or someone who was traumatized or somebody who just got divorced or someone who lost a loved one. All those things are valid as far as wounding and needing healing. But just being human, if you have a pulse at some point, like healing is just a progressive shedding the conditioned system, shedding the programming that we're all subjected to. Again, if you have a pulse and you live in this world, even if you came from a real loving family and an affirming family that loved you dearly, you're still subjected to a conditioned programmed system in this world that requires healing. If whether it's going to high school, college, um, starting a career, working in a corporation, working, on your job, whatever it is, you're going to encounter something that is going to be painful. Life is not without pain. We're always going to have pain. And sometimes people, they push it down, they throw it under the bed, under the rug, in the closet. They never process this. So they're carrying this emotional debris. So this is why people overeat. They overeat because instead of doing the emotional clearing work, they're using food as a substance, just like drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, whatever, to numb that pain. And they end up getting so a lot of people that are tremendously overweight have used food as their drug and their substance to process their emotional stuff instead of clearing it out. I'm not going to say that it's easy. I've been on this path a very long time and it's not easy. It's very rewarding though. And the more that you do, the lighter you become. You become lighter energetically, hence lighter physically.
That's interesting you bring that up because a couple other of our guests on the summit have also referred to it as emotional trauma. You refer to it, and I like your definition better of emotional debris. And they were talking about things that happened when we were children, very young, teenagers, young adults, that we carry with us unknowingly or subconsciously that
Yes.
is weighing us down because we haven't taken the time to deal with those issues, and as you refer to as cleaning it out. Uh, that's something that you help your clients do, correct?
Yes. Yes. And I use the word help loosely. I like to say this about trauma, by the way, being in this industry for 15 years, the work that I've done with people started way before that, more officially being sort of, how do I say, being connected to people in this industry more officially 15 years ago. The word trauma is very overused. And I share this on my podcast all the time. It's used and abused, frankly, in all respect to your guests and things. Not everything is a trauma. If divorce is painful, but I wouldn't say it's trauma. If there is domestic violence involved, where there's physical abuse, that's trauma. Rape is trauma. Losing a relative, they suddenly just die overnight is trauma. Murder is trauma. Those kinds of things are trauma. But going through a divorce, I got divorced. It wasn't traumatizing. A breakup isn't traumatizing. And there's a lot of mentality in this current environment, in this current, for lack of the other word, environment, that people really lack coping skills. They haven't been taught how to cope with pain, disappointment, the pains and disappointments of life. And so they look at everything as being trauma, and it's just not. There's hurts, there's wounds, there's trauma, there's pain. Um, Trauma, I don't apply trauma to a lot of things. It's just not. It's just not. And I think what it's doing is it's getting in people's minds that every little thing is a trauma. I'm so traumatized. I'm traumatized. Starbucks didn't have my syrup today. I'm traumatized. I mean, it's just it's just not. And I'm not downplaying. I went through divorce. I never had children, but getting divorced isn't really trauma. Like I said about the domestic violence, there are appropriate ways to frame things because how you frame it is how you process through it.
No, I can relate because not many people know this. My twin brother passed away at age 19 in a drowning accident.
That's
It
true.
took me 5 years to deal with it. And I was living life not realizing that I hadn't released the emotional issues that came with it. Uh, in reflecting back, I was talking where I had my parents, when I was 4 or 5, were fixing our basement downstairs. And I used a chisel and actually went through my thumb and cut my thumbnail. And I still have the scar where the nail's cut in half, basically. And so to me, that's a trauma because it's a physical trauma.
Yes.
And I understand what you're saying. And people who have served in Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam, they deal with trauma because of what they witnessed and what they went through, as opposed to, like you said, a divorce. And divorces, as a former divorce attorney, I understand that it's difficult. Sometimes it can be traumatizing depending on what's going on, but with the domestic violence and physical abuse, however, most of the time the issues are over money.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, I mean, it can be traumatizing if you are down to your last dollar like that. I don't even know if I would call that trauma. I mean, it's absolutely scary. I have been there. I know it all too well what that's like. But what you went through with your brother was definitely like, that's a legitimate form of trauma, and processing the debris, you carried the debris for a while, which is, it but you finally became aware of it and you cleared it. That's a horrifying experience.
And like you said, it's number one, acknowledging what the issue is, and then getting professional help through a person such as yourself to deal with it in the correct way.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm going to bring this up because you're well aware of it, as I am, that there are a lot of people who pretend or say they can help you, but are really more interested in how much money they can make rather than helping the person. And there's a lot of disingenuous people in your field. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Oh boy, that's a hot topic. I've sat back and I've witnessed this, and social media has contributed to it pretty significantly. Because here's the thing, first of all, and I don't want to, I'm not going to name drop, but there's a lot of people out there. There's like a lot of thought leaders, people that have been on stage for 30 years that have created programs that have um, taken their heart work, which is what I consider this, into another space of creating programs and workbooks and things. And there's nothing wrong with programs and workbooks, but so now like everybody wants to be this so and so life coach, and they use that person's name as this is the what I do, and they drop this person's name like, oh well, if this person's so and so life coach, well I want to work with them. And in the meantime, like there's a lot of, I'm just going to say this, like you know me a while now. I'm a straight shooter, and I think a lot of people they have either their own issues that they need healing in. They want to be heard, seen, known more than actually having the grit, the wherewithal, and the long term personal experience of transmuting, of transcending in their own life to really assist people on their healing journey. There's so many people that will receive a few revelations about their own selves, and now suddenly I want to be a life coach. I'm going to go take a course. I'm going to pay $4.99 and I'm going to get a piece of paper that says that I'm a life coach. And they have no idea how to work with people, that you're taking the livelihood of someone into your own hands. Um, you don't understand how to assess and discern behavior, emotionality. Um, this goes back 30 years for me. I wasn't a life coach 30 years ago or a healer 30 years ago, although that's what my destiny was. But I've walked through all of the things that I teach, that I talk about on my podcast, that I work with clients in. I've had traumas, I've had hurts, wounds, and I've just had some pain. I had to learn coping skills. I had to learn the difference between the two. I'm an empath as well, which is a highly sensitive person. That's a whole other ball of wax where sometimes people are empaths and they want to help people so much, but just because you can doesn't mean you should go into it as a profession, as wanting to do it as a profession or a career to make money. You can still help people, you can speak into some people's lives. And so I'll share this as well, that um, social media is a hotbed for people who are self-proclaimed teachers, life coaches. They use Facebook Live all the time. They create YouTube channels. They do TikTok videos. All good platforms, all good things, but have no real long-term life experience behind them to back up what they're saying. Don't know the first thing about what is a consultation call? How do you connect with someone? What are the questions you ask someone? How do you get to know somebody? How do you get to know a potential candidate? Um, how do you identify what their needs actually are if they don't know what they are? There's a lot that goes into this. And I'm an intuitive person. So I use my spiritual gifts and my emotional spiritual gifts per se as a way to identify those things. Not everybody has those abilities.
Yeah, I guess the message I want the audience to take away is be careful of who's out there. And as you mentioned, the example I used is just because you lost weight, not you personally, but other people have lost weight on a diet doesn't mean that they can teach you how to lose the weight. More importantly, 90% of people who lose weight on a diet gain it all back, usually within a year. So we want to be careful where I've shed my weight by changing my lifestyle and I've kept it off for over 8 years. That's a big difference than someone who just shed a lot of weight and isn't able to, it worked for them, but it may not work for the other person because not one
Right.
size fits all. And I think that's the message I'm taking away from what you're saying is that we have to be careful because there are people who will get certified, do some training, yet have never gone through the experience themselves or healed themselves where you have. So when you say, I understand what you're going through, you mean it because you've been there. Just like when I can say to an overweight person, I understand your frustration, your embarrassment, your humiliation. I know that because I was fat. I was
Yes,
there. And so I think that's important for the audience to understand. That's a fair
absolutely.
assessment. Yeah.
There's no greater, in my opinion, and I will say, it's opinion, it could be a truth, however that lands. There's no greater example than personal experience. I lived through this. I walked through this. I know the nooks and crannies of all the feelings and the emotions come up and the thought process, and changing the mind is not easy. It's not an easy, like, to really change your mentality from, well, everything from someone who's lived has had a victim mentality for 30 years of their life, 40 years of their life, and now I don't want to be a victim anymore. That takes work and effort to turn that brain around. that your first response, I think I talked about this last week or the week before in my podcast, like what the first response is. And when you're having conversations with people and when you're just in passing, whether it's in family or whatever it is, usually what a person's first response is, that's what's living in here, what that first response is. And a lot of people will say, did I say that? I didn't even realize that. Because that's how conditioned you are to belief systems about ourselves. So,
Yeah, no, it's you've already lived it, you've done the work, and you also been trained in it. So you have all three of those credentials, for lack of a better term.
it's in my wheelhouse.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think of things as an attitude adjustment. I have a little sign in front of my computer that says attitude is everything. The older I get, the healthier I become. The healthier I become, the more motivated I am to be healthier. And my philosophy is I'm growing younger as I get older. I was talking
Love
to
it.
a high school classmate who reached out to me several years ago, and we were talking, and she says, I think I need an attitude adjustment. I said, why do you say that? And she says, well, you're telling me about planning on hiking Kilimanjaro, which I did, traveling, doing this and doing that. And she says, I'm planning on dying and preparing for death. I said, yeah, I think
Oh,
you need an attitude adjustment. What's interesting is she changed everything around, lost 40 pounds. Her goal was 35. She ended up shedding 40 pounds. Met someone, and her life has been fantastic ever since. And again, like you said, mindset, attitude, a lot of it with the emotions, and people aren't aware of it. So they should reach out to you. So, where can people contact you and reach out to you if they want to seek some guidance and help from you?
908-839-2849
Is
is
that your
my
phone
direct.
number?
That is my phone number. Seriously, text me. dawnshale.com. Go there. Beautiful new updated website since January. Go there, read about me if you're more comfortable with that. My podcast, it's one page. Podcast is down, scroll down, and the whole library is listed right there. And you can just listen to any one of those episodes. You can shoot me a note, a message, or email through the website as well. But I would say those two things. You want to text me directly or just go to dawnshale.com.
Why don't
That's
you give
simple.
your phone number one more time?
908-839-2849.
Awesome. Well, we're out of time right
My
now.
name isn't Jenny. It's
Pardon?
not Jenny. I'm just making a joke. I said my name's not Jenny, 867-5309.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, thank you so
On
much,
Shale.
Don, for being a guest today and sharing your wisdom and knowledge with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. This has been great. I appreciate you too.